friends. This is the Be Real Babe podcast, a place where your average Canadian wolfpack come together to talk about life stresses, messes, and successes. Each week, we will bring you new episodes sharing our experiences on a ton of different topics in hopes that we get a better understanding of ourselves, each other, and this crazy world we live in. We want to build a community where we can show up as ourselves, be real, and lay it all out there. By sharing our experiences, we hope to reach others who can relate so we can all help each other learn, grow, and heal. But please keep in mind, as a disclaimer, none of us here are professionals, no one is giving any advice. We are strictly speaking of our life experiences and for entertainment purposes only. Now, with that being said, it's time. So grab your drink, grab your joint, and let's jump right in. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Be Real Babe podcast. I am your host, Brandy, and here today we are on episode 8, and we are talking about depression again. But again, as you guys are getting used to, we have our panel of peers here to tell you how they're dealing with depression, how they've dealt with it, and kind of where they are now. This episode is going to be a little bit different, though. Due to our crazy schedules, me and Kayla aren't able to be together, but you're going to hear us both in and out of all these interviews today. And so we hope that you'll bear with us through our crazy schedules. And first and foremost, though, we have a returning guest, our first returning guest. Her name is Courtney. If you haven't heard her episode, we highly recommend you going back to episode 6. Give it a listen. But without further ado, I'll introduce to you guys Courtney. Hey, Court, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for immediately jumping in last minute to come back into this one. I really appreciate it. And it was kind of funny. And you know, the reason why I asked you is because you had made the post saying that you have anxiety, depression, you know, just shouting out to the episode. And I was like, well, why wouldn't I ask her to do the depression one? She did so good with the anxiety one. So let's just go ahead and do this again the following week.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me back again.
It was good.
It's actually liberating to kind of talk about it, and it kind of frees you a little bit. So
totally,
I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, and like you can say that you've been feeling the ripple effect even after just a couple days. I mean, your guys' episode's already gone really fast. I think we've got over like 30 or 40 views on your guys' episode since I think we released it Friday. So that's really great. So a lot of people want to tune in to hear what you guys have to say, and I think it was so relatable. Everyone's story just kind of connected. And yeah, and then you were getting messages from people in your life talking to you about anxiety that you know, so it opened up the discussion, and that was kind of what we wanted the whole show to do. So it was really cool to see that in effect.
And it was, and it didn't even like dawn to me that it would happen like that. And it was just nice, and it made me feel helpful that I, you know, received a message saying like, thank you for sharing what you've gone through. You know, and this is our story. So it was nice to see like that I am not alone.
Totally.
You know,
and that by just owning your own story and healing yourself, you're helping other people either spark the conversation, spark the thought in their mind, become more aware in their own life, all of that jazz. And it's just kind of, you kind of get like, oh, I get goosebumps. Me and Kayla always get goosebumps about it because the idea was to connect people and open conversations, and it's doing it already in just a couple weeks. And so it was just really moving, and like we definitely went through our phases where we're like, what are we doing? And then those messages from you guys, it just kind of like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this is what we're doing.
And even if you spark, you know, 1 or 2 conversations, that's a start.
Totally.
You don't have to spark 10 or 15 or even like 20. 1 or 2, that just opens the door, and then it'll keep going.
Totally.
You know,
and then you find more people that are either suffering the same or close to, and then you just get more connection. And then, like you said, it's kind of liberating. It's like almost one of the last steps of fully accepting your story and who you are is putting it out there and like kind of giving zero fucks about what the judgment's going to be, because it's yours. And that's, I think, such a liberating feeling. And putting it out there, at first it's terrifying, of course, but then after you're like, wow, nothing happened, I didn't die. Okay, thanks, anxiety, again, and we proved you wrong, and cool, let's keep doing this.
Yes, exactly. And I was a little scared just because I haven't done anything like this before. And then I'm like, whatever, it's out there. Fuck it. Whatever people got to say, they got to say. They're going to say it anyway. Yeah. So who cares?
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, just to hear all the help that it's done, or how people have felt liberated through it, like that's what matters. And it's okay if you know, if not everyone loves it, like, you know, we've obviously had comments, and if you're listening, we know that you listen, just kidding. You know, you don't have to listen. That's what I love about podcasts. It's like, it's not ever, you always have like, you listen to the ones that mean something to you. And we just are so grateful that people are telling us this is meaning something to them. And that, you know, because we notice by just talking about stuff and being open with each other, like to the bone, we were like, wow, that was really freeing. And it was like a little bit more weight came off your shoulder, and then a little bit more and a little bit more. And we're like, I wonder how good it would feel if we just like put it out there and seen what people did with it. And all of a sudden it's been great.
And I think that's everyone's problem. They're just scared of what others think.
Totally.
And then if someone goes first, it's so much easier to be like, you know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you my story and
that's it. And
do
it
it.
is, and it's real, and it's facts. And and me and Kayla said, we'll be fine to pioneer through this. Like, we're both ready to, you know, we've done a lot of self-discovery, as you have in the last couple of years. And we're really ready to like take that to the next level by exposing it. And really, you know, by doing that, you kind of can't hide from it, right? You're going to expose a lot about yourself. You're going to figure it out. Even when you don't mean to, you'll be in the conversation, you're like, oh, I just learned that about myself. Like, I mean, obviously we edit it, it's not live, but nonetheless, I'm trying not to edit it. So you're like, okay, yeah, people are going to know that. Good thing my mom knows everything about me for the most part. Sorry, Lisa. Love you.
I'm sure she knows everything. But it is like, even in this past week since the other podcast, even with our text conversation, I said to you, like, this is how I feel like about even something someone else said to me. And it makes you so much more aware of other things that are happening. And it gets you looking deeper into yourself and trying to find more ways to grow and learn. And you're always wanting kind of more from that, like the more gratitude and satisfaction from knowing you help somebody kind of gets addicting a little bit,
Totally.
because you're like, you know what? I love it. I want more. I want to grow more so I can help somebody else.
Yes. And you're like, how can I learn more and be more vulnerable and put it all out there and be raw and just like fix it? And while I'm fixing it, I'm helping other people, like you said, spark a conversation, think about it, be more aware of, oh, hey, maybe, yeah, no, maybe I don't have depression, but you know, maybe on the days where I do feel really low, I will incorporate what, you know, Courtney had to say when she's going through something that, you know, is depressed, or through her depression times, you know, and then that's just going to help that person, whether they have depression or not, even through a hard time. You know, even with anxiety, you don't have to have anxiety to have a moment that where you're anxious, where those, you know, those things that you do, the tools, the things that you say aren't going to be helpful, right? So I think that's my favorite part, is that big or small, your story is going to help somebody either in a big way, little way, like, or even just yourself. Even that sounds maybe selfish, but isn't that like, that's the whole point?
Oh, no, I totally agree with that. Even if you help yourself, you're helping somebody else because you're fixing you. And then that helps when you're dealing with other situations, whether it's in the public or at home.
Totally. So then we'll lead into the questions then. Courtney, have you ever been diagnosed with depression?
Yes, I have. Back in 2011, 2012, I was in a bad situation, and someone close to me said, hey, you know what? You are looking a little depressed. And I didn't want to see it, but I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe I am. So I did go to my doctor, and he you have to fill out this sheet. And he's like, no, he's like, you are suffering from depression. I'm going to put you on some medication. And that was pretty much it. I just needed someone else to kind of push me a little bit too, to realize that it was depression, and it wasn't like, it was serious. It wasn't, you know, something that I should be hiding from.
For sure. And I've heard the other girls kind of say that there's just kind of a moment when you're in it and you're just kind of like, you just think that's what life is. Like, this is just how I am. This is just my life. Like, nothing's going to change from this. This is always how I'm going to be, until someone's like, no, like, you could get help for this, or, you know, you could maybe, you know, just talk to someone and see if they can help, because you don't have to continually live like this. But you just think inside your brain, sometimes you don't know anything else, or you convince yourself, maybe. I know, like I've said, I don't suffer with depression, but I've had bouts where it's just like, sometimes you kind of convince yourself, or like a shit situation, that it's okay, because it's terrifying to think otherwise, you know?
And it is. And that's part of my depression, and that's kind of where it stemmed, is you get so far in your head and you kind of like dig yourself into this deep, deep hole that it's hard to kind of see any light around you, and you have to try to get back out of that, but you don't know how. So sometimes you need someone to say, hey, you really need to go see a doctor, because you need help.
Totally. And like I was saying in the last episode with Erin, like, when did it become societally not okay to ask for help? Like, as human nature, we need to be a team. Like, as mammals, we need each other to procreate, to all this. And when was it, not saying this to you, but like, it just blows my mind. Like, when did it become, is it a generation thing? Is it a time in your life where it was just like so fucking hard to ask for help? Because we know it's helpful and it's good, but like, is it like our egos are just so goddamn loud? Just like, shut the fuck up and like ask for help. Like, oh, it pisses me. I get so mad at myself. I'm like, if you would have just asked for help like 15 minutes ago, you would have been like so much further ahead right now or whatever. Like, fuck.
I know, but that goes into as well, like, when did it become not okay to have feelings?
That too. Yep.
Right? Like, you shouldn't have those feelings. Yep. Why can't I be angry? Why can't I be sad? Why can't I cry? Like,
they're signals. They're telling
and
you,
they
your
are.
body's telling you something, your emotions are telling you something. So, like, I believe that we shouldn't get hooked up on them, because I've done that. Well, like, you can do whatever the fuck you want, but like, for me, I've gotten hooked up on emotions and feelings for far too long, on like, why, instead of just being like, okay, what is this trying to tell me? Instead of just being like, oh, maybe that person doesn't like me. It's like, well, why do you care about that?
And that's true. And I mean, I think that comes with different stages of your life as well, where you'll be like, you really care what someone thinks. And then you'll get to another stage and you're like, you know what? I actually don't really give a fuck what you think. I'm going to do me, you do you. And
I think that comes with confidence in whatever fields too, right? Like at work where you're just like so nervous when you first start. And then it's like, you get to that 6 months to a year where you're like, you're more confident. You're not as like scared of everything. It's same thing in new relationships. You try to be like, cute and like try not to like pick I mean, I pick my nose all the time, but like try not to show your disgusting behaviors, and then you move in and it's like there's different, like you said, different stages of your life and different stages in relationships or in any type work or friendships, where you don't turn on the full crazy right off the bat. Just kidding. I did. I don't know how Grant's still here.
you should be able to,
for sure.
like, take me for what I am. And
at my messes.
If you don't like it, too bad.
If you can't handle me at my hot mess all over the place. Like, I think the first time he realized I was a huge hot mess is when we first moved in together. And I don't eat. Yeah. In our friendship, I don't think you've ever seen me cook, but I am a mess. I am a huge mess. And I made waffles and it was just fucking everywhere. And I'm just like, look, this is just who I am. This is, I'm clumsy. I break stuff. I don't close lids. To keep lights on. Like, I'm a hot mess all the time. Like, it's just who I am.
I mean, we all are. I am too, half the time.
But hiding from it,
I mean, who cares?
makes it harder. You just gotta like lean the fuck in sometimes, right?
Oh, definitely.
So then, Court, could you elaborate maybe a little bit more on what type of depression that you suffered with? They're listing here is there's forms such as major depression, chronic depression, postpartum. Is that one of yours, or do you have a special form of it?
No, I started off with just major depression. Okay. It was after I lost a job. I kind of just got down. And then I kind of started my medication and it was going pretty good. And then when I got pregnant, even though my doctor said it was okay to still take them, I didn't. Okay. So then when I gave birth, I just went into the postpartum like immediately. I mean, it didn't help either that my kid was nocturnal and a night owl and never slept, and just all hours of the night. So I didn't sleep. That was probably my worst, was the postpartum. I would cry. I couldn't sleep. So I'd constantly cry. I couldn't shower by myself. Like, I couldn't wash my hair by myself. It was really bad. And then for the most part now, like, I'm just, sometimes it's like menopausal is like when you're going right into your menstrual cycle. I know it's coming because I get down in those days. And then seasonal. I mean, we live in the
True.
north. So, I mean, you have winter for almost
Yeah.
8 months. So you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm getting really depressed now. Like there's no sun, there's no, it's cold all the time and you can't get outside half the time. So mine kind of just varies kind of depending when it
Totally.
is and the time of year. But I try really hard to be more aware of when it's coming on, or I know that it's going to
Totally.
hit.
And it's like not like once the postpartum went, obviously over time, that one probably wasn't as frontal. It was more like you went back into your normal, not normal, but you know what I'm saying? Like the one that you're more common with it, after the pregnancy. And once you got through that, it just kind of went back to your normal stuff before, would you say? Or was it like the postpartum lasted like a really long time?
No, I'd say the postpartum lasted for probably a couple
Mm-hmm.
months or so. And then I got back on my medication and I got it back under
Good.
control. And then it went back to kind of what it was before baby. Just certain times or certain situations that would cause it to
Spike.
kind of come
Yeah,
out more. Yeah, kind of spike. And depending on how I was feeling about myself in that
totally. And
time.
and like now you're so much more aware, and I think for you, you're looking at it more of like as a critical thinking, I was to say like with anxiety too, it's kind of like once you get addicted to that like growth and positivity and like really digging in and really unpacking your own shit, you're like, ooh, how can I fix this now? Oh, ooh, that triggered that. And it's like it's not that it's not going to affect you at ever, but it's almost like it affects you almost a little bit less when you can think of it as more of like factual instead of like emotionally driven, if that makes sense.
And it does make sense. And what a lot of people don't even realize too is that both, like when you have both anxiety and depression, they both like
That's
play
yeah,
against each
yeah. Like
other,
Kayla was saying,
right? So
yeah.
like
Sorry,
you're
go ahead.
like you're constantly having a battle in your
Yeah,
own head,
yeah,
like with yourself. So it makes it even 10 times worse, and you get into that groove again where you can't sometimes get out of it because you're having a battle by yourself. Like it's nobody else, it's
well,
it's you. So even knowing that.
it's like a ping pong table. You've got anxiety on one side and depression on the other, and you're the ball, and your head's just bouncing back and forth. And Kayla had just made a post with her because she's the same way. She deals with both equally at the same, I would say, as you. And she said, sometimes they work together harmoniously, but most of the time they're fighting each other, fighting for who's kind of like the most important. And it's just like, whoa, I'm the most important. Stop.
And that's exactly what it is, because you're like, well, which one's feeding it more? Is it my anxiety that's feeding it, like feeding
Yeah,
how I'm feeling more, or is it my depression that's feeding it more? And it's hard to even know. So you have to kind of find a way to step back a little bit and be like, okay, this is causing my anxiety, but this is causing my depression. What can be eliminated so I can kind of figure out where to go and which one to kind of tackle
totally. Is it something
first?
that's like it's working me up to get depressed, or am I depressed and now I'm being anxious because of my depression? And then kind of maybe identifying which one is taking precedent or whatever. And I think it's like everything. It's like once you can call it out and put a name to it and like kind of you can fight it a little bit more or unpack it a little bit more or be more aware so that the next time it comes up you can be like, oh, and like you journal a lot obviously when you feel good or like not feeling good like as a stressor. And so like being like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there, I'm noticing a pattern that every time around the 15th of the month I'm really starting to freak out. And then you look at your like period thing and you're like, oh well, yeah, makes sense. And then you can be like, oh wow, it's because in our all of our heads we always think that we're crazy no matter whether we have mental illnesses or not. Women and everyone just think that they're, I think for the most part most people think they're crazy. So when you can kind of like identify that, being like, oh, my body is flying with hormones right now, this makes a little bit more sense. And it's like I feel like I could kind of attack it a little bit more common sense, not just like, fuck, I'm out of control.
And that's kind of how I am. And I did start like a journal, kind of like on just a
Yeah,
Google Doc, and I shared it with Pete because I said, like, when I'm in certain places and I have different feelings, it's not easy to kind of communicate those right
totally.
at the moment to your spouse or even to a friend of like how you're feeling or why they think you're yelling or why you're crying. So I kind of, when I feel that way, I get on and I kind of just start journaling. It could be like all over the place with my thoughts. But then he can get on and he can read and be like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Or, what did you mean by this? And then I can kind of go back and reflect on it too and be like, okay, I meant this, not how kind of you perceived it.
And it's kind of getting it out of your head because it's so kind of jumbled, and then getting it out, and then you can read it to yourself and try to understand yourself as well. And then that helps him help you identify things and kind of help him get him, holy crap, for him to see how your thought patterns go, right? And that's, I think, having that sort of communication with your spouse is so fucking huge because, a lot of us will just make up something hypothetical because we don't know answers and we're not communicating that. Or how many times have things happened in your life where something's happened or you got in a fight and you turned around and that person said something, you're like, what? I had no fucking idea. If you would have told me that would have just evaded all of this. And I think that happens more often than not. So have that communication and show hey, it's not you, it's just my brain pattern, right? And here, show you. But if you didn't explain that, you'd be like, what the fuck? Why am I the problem?
And it is. And even just getting them to realize it's not you. I'm taking it out on you. It's not you. It's something that triggered, but it brought up, either past relationships or past friendships that, this is same thing happened and it causes, and then you get in your head and you're like, well, I didn't mean to take it out on you. And then the more you dig yourself in again, the more depressed you get and it's harder to get out. So that's why I have to put it down in a journal and writing somewhere so that I know, so he knows even that it's not him, it's where I was in that moment. And then we can talk about it when I'm a little more rational
and it's
a little
just
more
communicating
sane
to each other how each other operates, and that's how you advance. So how does that how does it affect your life day to day now that you're past your postpartum, babies are no more babies? I feel so old.
I know.
No longer babies. You're far more aware of everything. You've definitely are super aware, even from the last year or two. Every time I talk, I feel you're evolving. How does this affect your day-to-day life now with work, school, and your relationships?
I mean, every day is so different. The more just right now, with the end of the semester coming, the more stress I have on me, the more my anxiety kind of comes up, and then that feeds my depression. And then with my spouse doing camp work as well, you get into that place too, where, you don't, you make things up of what you can't see, I guess, things that could happen, or, this person said, well, when my spouse was there, this happened or whatever. And, other people feed into it.
Cool.
It is. I definitely am trying to be more aware of what people say and how I react now. I just try to take it one day at a time so that it doesn't affect any part of my life. If I know something is really bothering me, and if Pete's not home and it has to do with him, I'll try to either talk to him about it later, but I try not to take it to work with me, or definitely take it when I'm dealing with the kids. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but just being aware and kind of keeping it hidden a little bit sometimes, just because I don't want it to affect my daily life, and sometimes it obviously will, but for me, I'm trying to be more aware, but I will still hide it at times just to kind of get through my day.
Appropriate time for you, that you feel you're in a safe and constructive environment to talk about it. Sometimes even yourself, you're like, yeah, this is not good, but if I talk about it right now, I'm probably not going to show up like I want to show up. I'm probably going to show up as maybe, I don't know for you, but for me, I know I'm going to show up more emotionally challenged and probably ruder than I really want to, and I'm not able to communicate properly and know this is just going to be a hot mess, so I'm just going to take a time.
Yeah, and you have to find a time to say, even with me and Pete, he's like, okay, we need to take a break. We need to pause this. Let's both calm down and then come back and discuss it, because you get heated, and the more you get in and the more heated it is, the more it just feeds everything else. So even being aware of that, for me, I never really, I guess I am a people pleaser in some sense, but sometimes I don't remember that somebody else has feelings too. So then I'm trying to tell you how I feel, but I forget that it also, like, they're going to have a feeling about it
Totally.
if it's about them. So just trying to remember, okay, wait, it is affecting this person too.
Mm-hmm.
Take a step back, let them process, and then kind of
Yeah, and it's having that
revisit it.
accountability that like, okay, I might be mad, but maybe their reaction is something that I did. So, I think for me, it's like how I approach situations instead of like point a finger. It's kind of like, I kind of am feeling this way, um, or you reacted this way. Can I ask why instead of just accusing? Because what I usually find, it's like that's a reaction from something I did, and then I get all mad, and I'm like, ah, fuck, I was actually the root cause of this to begin with, or like did I open up a safe space for someone to come and talk to me about this said hard topic? No, I didn't. I made it very firm. I didn't want to talk about this. So then I can't be mad that they didn't come and talk to me about this?
And you do, and you have to have boundaries because, like, even now with all the texting and everything like that, when your
Mm-hmm.
spouse is away, even you can't have
No.
emotions from a text message. I constantly forget to turn off my caps locks, and he's like, "Why are you yelling?" And I'm like, "I'm
Yeah.
not yelling. I just forgot to turn it off." But you can't, and then you like he misreads it,
Yeah.
or I'll
And it
misread
sends you.
it, or even when you're having a right? It's not. I'm like, I'm not being sarcastic. He's like, well, it read that way, and I'm like, I wasn't. I promise. But like and then even that, I hate
Yeah.
texting for that part.
It's like, I just don't know how to convey. It's like, how many smiley faces and exclamation marks do I have to put to make sure that this sounds nice? How many monkey faces?
I know even for me this time, because it has been different, I've had him home for so much, I was feeling myself getting just more depressed with him
Totally.
being away and everything falling more on me. So I said to him, like, I know that you don't like talking on the phone every night, but
Mm-hmm.
even if it's for 10 minutes, just so I can hear your voice, we can talk about
Yeah.
anything that we really need to.
Like a team meeting.
Um, so that, yeah, so that you can hear my
Yeah.
expression and what the emotion that comes with it, because sometimes you can't. And when we did have a conversation, he's like, oh, I never really got that from your text. I'm like, see, you can't hear emotion in a
Yeah.
text
And if that's
message
what you
because you
live for
can't.
the whole time and you're a whole week at just text message, and let's say you almost forget how like that you're in a happy, you're like, it just seems so like business.
It does. And it's like I think it takes the emotion even out of your relationship, whether it's friendships or um, a spousal relationship, even with your kids. I hate when my kids
Totally.
text me, because I'm like, I'm in the next room. Just like
Fuck this
walk over.
generation.
Like it's just so I know it's so impersonal. They'll have like four of them on a couch and just text back and forth, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is what's wrong.
No
You
more.
don't know how to communicate. So
Yeah.
I know it's crazy, but it does, and it feeds. Like for me, I learning my love language was probably one of the
Yes.
best things I did too,
Yeah.
because we all have different ones. And mine, I am a very like a physical person, and I like words of affirmation, but I like to hear them. I don't like just
Yep.
getting them like in a text message, or I like to hear them with your voice. So for me, I said to him, like, I like physical touch, where he's not a person. So I'm like, even just having a kiss a day, if we didn't get that, that would feed into my depression, because
Yep.
I'm like, okay, well,
He
what's
is a
wrong
love.
with me? Um, and it does. So like, even just looking back and being like, okay, that's not his love language. Let's step back. It's not you. Like, it's even just learning those things, every day, just to kind of, you have to figure out you, but you also have to figure out everybody else
Yeah.
too, because
And then
everybody
and
is so
then you
different.
understand at that point that, okay, this whole time it's not that they don't love me and there's something wrong with me. It's just that they love in a different way. And I just, once I understand that, and like we're the same, Grant's the same as you. He's more physical touch, where I'm 100% words of affirmation, where it's like, so then I have to remember, like make sure that I'm loving him in the way that that he receives it. It's not that I don't love hugs and kisses. It's just like, for me, it's like words. I'm just such a word whore. So, like, and then once you learn that about each other, then it makes it really easy to see, okay, when he's grabbing my leg all the time, it's not just like, he's like, always wanting to, I mean, yeah, but that's just him loving me, where it's
Yeah.
like, for me, it's like, oh, well, and then if he doesn't say those words, I'm like, oh, well, he doesn't love me because he's not sending me memes or tagging me or, using all these words. And it's like, no, that's not it. Like, that's his way of loving you. And I think that was the same thing that helped my anxiety a lot, is just like calling that out right away. And then learning that, because that's something I did not have in my marriage. And I think that was a really big mistake on my part, is understanding that I was being loved, just not in the way that I receive it. And I was loving, but it wasn't being received because it wasn't in the way that person received it. And I agree. It's a huge, I think, thing if you're in a relationship to help with your mental health, is really understanding each other's love language. I totally agree with that.
And like coming up with a compromise, like of how much is too much. Because I mean, every part of the day, like I would, if I can get love, I'll get it. But then I know he hates it, so I'm like, okay, how much is
and
too
knowing
much?
that's not like
So,
a reflection of you or the love that he has, more just like respecting his boundaries, right?
oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, even with him being away, it's helped me grow even more, as hard as it is, and as hard as it's been on me mentally and physically. It's helped me grow and see, okay, you know what? We needed a little break so we could kind of revamp and understand
Totally.
each other a little bit more, so that we can kind of move forward in
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
a different
And I love
way.
that for you guys. And that's all growth. It's like changing growth. Oh, this changed in our life. Let's grow to here because this isn't working, or it's not the same situation anymore. So now, I'm working, you're in school, and this and that, and the kids are this old. So let's change to this, instead of just like keep trying to do the same thing that doesn't work. Like always constantly evolving and not being afraid to grow and be honest and say, this isn't working. And I think that's the whole point of a marriage, to be honest with you.
I think so too. And
No,
because I mean, there is no handbook, there's no right and wrong. You have to, I think it's harder to fight for a marriage than
totally.
it is to just let it go. Because, I mean, it takes a lot of work. It's like having another like child almost, because you're trying to raise it and grow it and
For sure.
build it up
Something
to
we're
be something. So it's,
totally. No, I say something,
oh,
worth
go
it.
ahead.
Just like, and like you said, it's just like a child. It starts really young and then it grows over time, and there's roadblocks and road bumps you have to go through. And it's not, it's easy it's easy and it's hard. People are like, oh, it shouldn't be hard, but it's like, no, it is, because it's two completely different people raised completely differently with different thoughts coming together and having a life together. And there's going to be ins and outs. But I think communication and honesty is super important. And I think the saddest thing is that if you didn't have that, you couldn't communicate that you're probably suffering from some of these mental illnesses, and that meanwhile this whole time your spouse is thinking it's them, or you know what I mean. So having that open dialogue to be like, hey, I'm depressed, this isn't you. Meanwhile, you're thinking, oh, this person must be so unhappy because of me, right? And then
Yeah, that's definitely how it is. Or they're thinking, or you're thinking, they're thinking
yeah,
that you're just
absolutely.
fucking crazy.
Totally. So then I know you
Right.
said, just to keep going, because we could talk forever, but you did manage your depression
Mm-hmm.
in the past medically. Are you still currently medicating for your depression?
No, last year, right as COVID hit too, I decided I'm at home. I'm not going to be around anybody. I'm going to wean myself off my pharmaceutical meds and just try to go naturally. I think too many chemical medications in your
Yep.
system, not kind of knowing what's happening. I just wanted to try something natural, and it's been working. I mean, there's times where, I mean, my CBD isn't cutting it and I know it, so I have to try to find another way
Work through
to
it.
um yeah, definitely like work through it or find another outlet. So I have been
Mm-hmm.
doing more walks and stuff lately. Like if the other day I was getting into my book and I couldn't, and I just like, if I stay here any longer, I'm going to fall asleep, and I'm just getting down and down. I'm like, I'm just going to go for a walk, and I ended up doing like
Nice.
2.5K, but it made me feel so free, and just, I'm like, okay, now I can get back and do what I
Yeah, that
need to do.
natural
Just that
boost
bit of
of life
fresh
just
air.
kind of re-energized you, if, as if you took like a shot of energy drink or something, and kind of gave you a little boost to keep going. And it was natural, so that just kind of almost makes it more empowering because it was like free.
Yeah, and I definitely, when I start seeing it come on now, I try to pick up whether it's shove in my earbuds and listen to some music, which my kids hate when I sing, or like, I try to scrapbook or go outside, or I'll text my friend and be like, hey, do you want to go for a walk? Just
Positive.
try to get out. Even if I don't want to, I'll push myself to kind of get out of it before it gets to be like a really deep,
For sure, you're
dark
finding your
place that
red
I
flags and
don't want
you're
to go to.
stopping it before it's, like you said, in your different zones before you get too far gone. You're like, okay, I need to, whatever this is doing is taking me down this path. Oop, I need to switch and do something that's going to take me down a happy path until I can, get back to business of life. And I think that's such an empowering response to be able to feel from yourself.
Oh, it definitely is. And like every day I'm still learning more and more. So, and every day is different. So I have to try new things and I have to have a toolbox with multiple different
It's
ways.
overwhelming.
Otherwise, what worked today. Yeah. And what worked today might not work tomorrow. So
Of
it's
course.
definitely
And
a
then you
learning
just,
process every
as you get
day.
older, you learn more and more. And the more, like we said, you'll talk about this, someone else will be like, hey, this is what I do. I'm like, oh shit, I never thought about that. I'm going to try that next time. And it's just like so empowering to be like, okay, that worked for this person. Let me give it a try, and just having that communication of all these different ways, whether you need to be medicinal or natural. But even if you're doing, we can all test to sometimes the medication isn't the right one for you. It's not working. You still need to do the work. You can't just, well, you can, but I mean, for most part, most of us will say it comes back to you. So you still got to do the work. And then
And it's true. And I was on multiple different pharmaceutical medications and it wasn't like the first one worked for so long and then
exactly.
it got to the point where it wasn't. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to get to that point anyway with the second one
Call it
at
quit.
some point,
Yeah,
let's
for sure.
just try to go
I kind of was
natural.
like that too. It was like, okay, I'm 34. Like, and I'm again not discouraging people from doing whatever they need to do. But for me, it was like at the time, I was like, okay, I'm 32. If I do this now and I'm already advancing in my dosage this much, what the hell am I going to be like in 10 years from now, 15, 20? I don't want to be dependent on these. Like, so can I give this up and try to work through whatever it is naturally until I'm to the point where I can't, and then I did, and now it's better. And I feel really like a little bit more free to have that in my older age when I'm maybe not able to control some things as much. So I think you said it was 2012 and you said was the earliest. Was that your earliest signs of depression? How old would you have been then? Is that when you
Um,
said that you noticed it? Was that what you said,
2012. Oh my
2012?
gosh. Yeah, that's when I noticed it. Like it was brought to my attention. I think there was a little bit
Yeah,
before,
because I
but I
think
was
that's when we
very
first
in
kind of met
denial
was in
about it.
2012. I think just before
Um,
I got married was when we kind of met.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
I
I'm a
was like,
year
I don't
older
know,
than
older.
you, or a year younger than you.
I'm the old
Um,
bat.
no, you're younger. Um, but I think there was some signs before, but because I was so in denial and I used to shove like all my issues down, I didn't want to. I didn't want to acknowledge that there was something wrong because then I would have to deal with everything that
Totally.
I've kind of stuffed down. So, it. I mean, even in my teens, there was times where I would just want to stay at home and um, not kind of hang out with anybody. But I mean,
Oh God,
that's part of being a teen and
that doesn't
hormonal
help
too.
anything.
So, and I know, I
It's all
know, and I
coming
have
back.
one now, so I know, right? It's bad, but yeah, definitely 2011,
Yeah, in the face.
2012 is when it really
Yeah, it's been,
kind of
and
hit
that's
me.
how, oh my gosh, like 10, almost 10 years at this point, almost a decade. So in that decade of you having it,
Yeah.
obviously you've had your ups and your downs. What would you say is something that you find the most like successful for you with your depression through your whole journey? Would you say that there's been certain medications that have helped you the most, or are you finding the more natural route and reworking those brain patterns that let's say created from the past or whatever, you know you know what I'm trying to say?
I think I think more natural, and the biggest like accomplishment from it is acknowledging that I do have that problem, that I
Mm-hmm.
am like I am living with depression. When I acknowledged it and I kind of made more people aware that that's what I was going through, that's when I kind of really noticed the change in myself even. And when I could say, okay, I need help in this moment, there's too much going on. Someone has to either leave and go home, or I need to remove myself from the situation. Just even acknowledging things around me, whether it's avoiding situations, avoiding people, learning how to say no. That was a big thing for me because I
you were the
hardly
yes
ever did. I would
woman.
always, and I am kind of
When it
still, but
protects you though,
I'm trying to be
I'm
more like,
all for I'm down for shit too all the time, but there's a difference of always saying yes because you want to be a part of it and you want to have fun and you just that person, to the point where it's like you're just doing it because you're going to have FOMO and you're ignoring everything else in your life, and like what's most important is like taking care of you. I don't know, I know you'd be the same, like dying and tired and you probably should have stayed home and rested, but you just had to show up.
and that's what it was getting for me. And I finally, even now, like I feel so bad when I do say no, or I'll make plans and then the day come and I'm like, I don't feel like going, but it's either do I go and make the person happy and make myself miserable, or do I stay home and make me happy? But then, I upset somebody else. So I'm like having that battle of which one's going to be better. And I usually 95% of the time I'll give in and go because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But again, I'm trying to, 2021 for me is going to be more self-care, putting me first, because I've always put everybody above myself. And in this past year, even since COVID, knowing that putting everyone first is what actually was killing me. It was making my depression worse. It was making my anxiety worse. And it was slowly like just eating at me so much that I was becoming physically ill. I didn't want to go anywhere. I was crying every day. I didn't want
You're out of
to be
sorts.
around anybody. So I'm just, yeah. So I finally just said, this year I'm going to try to say no more. I'm going to be more open to having time to myself. I just come back from 24 hours of a 4-hour drive one way and a 4-hour drive back. And it was so nice to sit in the car and turn the music up and just sing and it was just so relaxing that I really needed it. And I didn't know how much until I got back and I'm like,
and then
oh
too,
my God,
now
that
you
was so
have a more
relaxing for me.
full cup to fill others up. And we always think like if we take that time to fill up our cup, that the other people are losing out or somehow going to be drained of theirs. But it's not true. They'll survive without us and we'll be better. And you're going to be able to show up better this week for yourself, for your kids, for your husband, for everyone, because you did take that break. And we're all guilty of it at all different. Moms are guilty of it with their children. Us workaholics are guilty with it at work. Like people that are addicted to their social life, are guilty of like not always wanting to go out and realizing, but we all need that grounding time. We all need that reset in whatever way. I mean, that could look different for everybody, but we all need that self-care time. And we're all stubborn to think that we don't. And it's nice when you realize you do, and then you feel more empowered to take it. And then you show how that positively impacts people in your life. And you're like, fuck yeah, I can do more of this. And then it's just like, then shit just starts working out. And then that guilt just kind of goes away. Slowly over time.
It does over time, and I'm starting to feeling less and less guilty, but it was a big thing. I was filling everyone's cup and I was draining my own, but because I'd get to the point where if I didn't do something for someone else, I'd feel guilty. So I'm like, well, I have to do it because that's not, they feel really nice when I do, but I was still emptying mine so much and it wasn't getting filled back up. And I'm like, I need to learn how to fill my own cup and not expect other people to kind of do that. It's nice when other people fill your cup too, but you have to find happiness in yourself and find a way to
nice
fill up
balance.
your own
It's like,
cup.
hey, I can fill up my own cup and I'm a beautiful little cup on my own, but it's sure nice when other people dip a little bit of theirs into mine and then I can dip more into other people. That sounds like a really fucking weird orgy analogy, but it's just kind of like community, right? Where it all comes back that it takes like, and I obviously can't speak on being a parent, but to me, it takes a community to raise a child. And why I say that is because I think a child that has a community raising them has far more advantage because like, and I come from a single mom and I had a lot of advantage from that. My mom taught me how to be a boss bitch by myself, build shit by myself. Like I'm a dainty little girl because I have Grant, but if he's not here, I can take care of business. But, and that being said is that I was raised by an army of people of different perspectives. So I think that gave me an edge to see a lot of different views in the world. Right. So I think, I don't even know what my point of the story was, but, I don't know because I had a stoner thought and I was just really excited about this. And I was like, this is a really good point. And then I was like, what was your point? Stupid. Just kidding. But just like, it does a community. Right. And so it's like,
but it does, you have
like
to
going back to that team and like talking about it and, being open because then it's like, we can help each other and we can be more successful when we help each other. I think that was my whole point of community and it takes a team. Yeah.
And it is, but you have to be open-minded because,
and not prideful.
I wasn't for a while.
My ego
and then
always gets in my way.
No, and I wasn't. Pride,
that's a whole nother month
that's
topic.
just a whole other issue in itself. But I wasn't open-minded. And then when I changed my perspective and I'm like, okay, I can see your point of view and I can see why you think this way, but I also need you to be able to see why I think this way. That's different from yours. And I think that's where the whole issue, even with mental health, with everything, is people who don't understand it sometimes don't want to switch off to understand, or on to whichever way you look at it, to see it from a person who does suffer. I don't want to come tonight. It's not because I'm not your friend or, whatever. I'm not feeling well and I'm not in a mood to laugh or joke. I just need to have my feelings, but I need you to understand.
Yeah. And you want to show up as your best
that
version
these are
of
my
yourself.
feelings.
I know for me, it's like everyone knows me as such like a happy-go-lucky, bubbly person and super high energy. So if I show up and my energy is so low, then I'm getting asked a million questions, what's wrong? And sometimes you're like, yo, I just don't want to answer. This is just me today and it's okay. So that's for me. It's like, if it's going to put me in a situation where I'm going to like, not to sound bad, but like bum people out because of my low energy, I just rather just like vibrate low at home and just get stoned and like hang out with Grant and the cats and just be chill and not put that pressure. But equally so, I'll be like, okay, you can't do that forever. I'll call myself and be like, you need to go out and be social. And I know you do the same thing. It's like, it's cool to stay in retreat, but also like you can get easily, especially with a year like this, trapped up in there. And that just, you need that social interaction. I know for you too, you need that, even though sometimes we say that we hate it, we actually love it.
Yeah, I do. Like I'm definitely try to be more outgoing, but sometimes you also just need to own your feelings. And if that means you need to stay in bed or you need to have a piece of cake that you normally wouldn't have, or cry or whatever, you need to have that too. And you need to be okay with having that.
Girl. Well, we've gotten almost an hour. We could just talk forever. I think this is why I was like, she could definitely talk for another hour about this stuff. Not, I don't mean that in a bad way, but just mean because you've had so much self-discovery and I know you just have so much to share because it's been such a relief for you. And so I hope that today was another relieving session for you, because it's been so great to learn about something that I really have dealt with on a light version, but it just blows my mind because when I met you is when you're at your depth of it. And I'm just so in awe of the woman that you've become and how you've just handled yourself through all of it. I know it's probably felt like an explosion of hot dumpster fire in your brain. But from the outside, you've held yourself so well. And I'm just so proud to know that the dumpster fire is calming down on the inside of your noggin.
Oh, thank you so much. It definitely has come a long way from where it was, but it helps when you have amazing people who do support you and do understand.
Yeah, and just are cheering you on in your
don't judge you because of it,
giving you space to figure that out. And I think that's what we want to do this community. Like, here's a space where you can grow and lay it out there and let's figure it out. As you're laying it out there, we're going to figure out stuff and discover stuff about ourselves. And then it's like, oh, sweet. Okay, cool. And like I said to you, I'm like, that you're empowering other people, especially other moms when you're going stuff with you know, your own kids and you're being vulnerable about that. And you were just like, holy shit, I didn't even think about that. And it's like, well, no, yeah, you know, you say I'm inspiring, but you're inspiring people too. Right. So, thank you again for coming on to our really next guest episode right after your last one and sharing this, because I know a lot of people are going to relate to that and definitely feel less alone. And I'm excited for you to make even more connections, and excited because I know you're going to be on another show next month. There's probably 3 that you could be a part of, so I'll have to figure out which one